Welcome to the SWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier podcast. We're here again with one of our guest hosts, Sherina, who comes to us with an education background. And we thought we'd tackle something that's close to education, well, part of education, and we thought we'd talk about tutoring. So we wanted to get to a little bit of what it is, why it's important, some of the benefits, and maybe some like myths and misconceptions. So when I was growing up, I didn't have the luxury of a tutor because, I mean, money was a little bit tighter there, and like it's one of those things where you almost had a bit of a stigma that like, well, are you not smart because you need a tutor? But yeah, if you don't mind sharing a little bit of your experiences on tutoring and some of your thoughts on the benefits and then myths and misconceptions, then we can start there.
Yeah. So I actually didn't plan on doing tutoring at all. It came as a part of my teacher's college education. So part of the program requires you to volunteer in a place that you live in so that you get to know your community. And when I applied, I actually applied to be a mentor because I thought I'd be better at that, talking to students and stuff like that. I didn't realize I applied for the wrong one. I had actually applied for tutoring. So when I went for the orientation, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this because it's high school students. I'm known to work with elementary. So like, I don't know the material for high school. Will I be a good tutor? There was so much self-doubt. And I was like, I don't think this is for me. So the first thing I did was I sent an email. I said, can I switch? And they're like, sure, but we have too many mentors, so no. And then they're like, no, just try the tutoring. And I did, and I loved it so much because I didn't realize how much easier it would be. I think I was so focused on like, what if I had to help with math? Like, I'm not a strong math person, but they were like, no, you pick your strengths, and then that's what you tutor. So it was at a community center, and the program is called Pathways to Education. And the program works to ensure kids get to attend post-secondary education. And it's a good place because they get access to laptops, they get access to, a safe space to do work. They come after school, it's 3 hours, and they complete homework and all that. It was a really nice place to see because these are kids who might not, get that personal space to do their work. They don't have the technology, they don't have the help. And this really pushed for kids to like apply for scholarships, get jobs, do all that stuff. I thought it was amazing. And tutoring there was also like, I was like, I'm good at English, I'm good at social science. They're like, great, that's what you tutor on. That's it. And I was like, okay, great. And whenever I would go there once a week.
Okay.
And I would sort of lounge around, and then there would be facilitators there, and they would be like, are you free? And then they would match you up with students. Or if you're feeling bold, you could walk around yourself and ask kids what they needed. But for the most part, like I would just wait, and then I'd get paired up with a couple of different kids in the 3 hours. And I really, really liked it.
Sounds good. So would you mind walking us through your kind of first experience? So you just went through this process, you applied to the wrong thing, and you're like, okay, just give it a shot, whatever. And you have what you mentioned, self-doubt, and you weren't sure you could do it. So if you can recall kind of that first experience, you get in there and you're not sure about yourself, and they match you with a student, and what was that kind of first experience, or even actually before that, did you do anything to prepare yourself, knowing that this is going to be new, or you just kind of
either? No,
I
didn't do any preparations. I thought the best thing I can do is just go in and see for myself what it's like, and then just decide from there. If I'm like, listen, I can't, there's not a possibility, then that's fine. But because the thing is, when we were going through our like orientation, the counselors were telling us that like a big part of your job is also just making the kids feel safe, right? You might not always be tutoring. Sometimes you might just be talking to them, making them feel better or whatever because they're having other things going on in school. So that's why I was kind of like, okay, you know what? I'll see how it goes. The very first day was me and 3 other girls. We walked in. It's a really, really large space. You have all the kids sitting just wherever in groups, the friends from different schools, different high schools. And it's nerve-wracking, right? Because they may or may not judge you and you feel uncool and you're like, can I relate to them because do I look like a loser? I don't know. And then the facilitator did his part and they introduced it like, these are new tutors, so they'll be helping you. And the kids were all very sweet, very nice. Which I think was also one thing I was worried about. I'm like, can I work with kids at this age? Because like, I'm so used to being with little ones. And these are kids who are my height or bigger and have, more opinions and more thoughts. But I think I actually liked it more in a way because it was a different type of teaching. I was tapping into a different way of expressing myself with them and different type of learning strategies, teaching strategies. First day, I think I was with, I can't remember exactly. I remember I was with 2 students, and it was with creative writing, which I really, really love.
Okay.
So it worked out. I was able to read their stories, tell them how to improve, and after that, like I would have kids come to me, even when they didn't need help. Like they're like, no, like we have to work with you, and I'm like, you don't need my help right now. So it's kind of like building that relationship very slowly, right? I came in every week. I would sit down. I would be matched up usually with the same couple of kids because once they're comfortable with you, the tutors, like the facilitators themselves, are like, you know what, you guys work well. Continue to work well because it helps a kid build more and more of a relationship, and then they're also more comfortable with you sharing their work and stuff. Yeah, so I remember the first few weeks I was kind of like, and then the more comfortable I got with it, I'm like, no, I'm happy I'm not with the mentoring. Like I like the tutoring side.
Sounds good. So how long did you end up doing that? So were you always in like creative writing and that area, or okay?
Mine was a creative writing plus also social science, so like history, geography, anything with writing. I didn't touch on math and science. They had other tutors who would cover that, and I was there for 1 year as part of the program. So every week on Wednesdays, I was there for 3 hours. And then after that finished, I stayed because I really liked it. So other people had gone, they'd finished their year and they were done. And I was like, no, I want to stay. And so I continued for a second year. And that time I started going, I think it was 2 to 3 days a week when I started going on my own. And when we did that, we were doing the regular program, which was the tutoring. And then someone also created a second, it was like a extra program as part of the tutoring for writing help, and then they asked me if I would want to join that because I liked writing. So it was still part of the 3 hours, but it was kind of like I was in a different section. But honestly, I'd say I was still doing the same thing. Like the same kids would still come by. They're like, "We don't care that you're here. Come help." I was like, "Okay, yeah."
So what I heard from that is to pick your strengths, right? So if you are kind of a writing person, then make sure you tutor writing. If you're a math or science person, then those are your areas. You don't have to deal with the writing because
Exactly.
everyone has their areas of interest, and
Exactly.
unless you're using it as a way to kind of improve yourself in that area, it probably helps with kind of your own confidence if you're picking your strengths. So. And what else? What other experiences did you have in tutoring? So that opportunity was a volunteer role. It wasn't paid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever take a look at any sort of paid opportunities?
I thought about it, but I think the timing didn't fit my schedule at the time. I had applied for online tutoring for kids. I think that was from China, and they were looking for English tutors.
Okay.
And that was paid, but the timing didn't work because I think I would have to be up late night, and I was also doing teachers college, so I turned that down. But yeah, so I ended up sticking with just the Pathways program because I really liked the initiative that the program was taking. So I'm like, even if I'm not getting paid, I mean, you can see the kids are actually like applying. I think one part that I really enjoyed, I worked with a couple of students where we would go through university scholarship applications. And that's what they would come to the tutoring program for, right? So I think a lot of people forget that tutoring is not just, you need help with the work. A lot of the kids that came there, it's not that they needed help with the work, they just wanted to see where they could improve. Like they wanted to look at their work so they could improve it, get the best grade possible. So there's something like they're brilliant, they're so bright, and they're getting scholarship after scholarship. They want you to look at their applications. I think that's another thing people should consider for tutoring. Like it doesn't have to be just for schoolwork. Right, a lot of kids are looking for resume help and stuff like that too, and want experience with that kind of thing, university applications, all of that.
Sounds good. So if you don't mind sharing some of the kind of myths and misconceptions that you've encountered. So you mentioned a couple where, I mean, tutoring has that stigma where it's for the people who are behind, that like not as smart as others, but it could be that you are smart, but you just want to be smarter, or you have pretty good experience and things like that, but you just want your application to the universities or colleges to really stand out. So are there other kind of myths and misconceptions that you've encountered?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, even for myself, I remember when I was in grade 10, I wasn't, I mean, sometimes you have a teacher that you really click with, and other times, like, I think because I was already kind of behind in grade 10, um, my teacher wasn't helping me as much as I needed, so we got a tutor. And it was fine, but I felt like a big part of it was, when I mentioned it, it was kind of like, oh, why are you not smart enough that you need a tutor? I remember when I was taking extra math classes, it wasn't even tutoring, that was like Kumon, I think. Another lady, she was like, oh, why, you're not good at math? And I'm like, I don't think you all understand what it means to just do extra work or have extra help. Like, if someone is trying to improve themselves, why is that a problem? Right? Like, they're taking the steps that they need to do better. So I think we need to stop associating tutor with like getting help. I think it's just more like, think of it as like improvement or building, studying. Those are all tools you need to, improve and do better. It doesn't have to be associated with how intelligent or smart you are. Almost all the kids that came to that program were brilliant. They were there because they wanted to keep succeeding and keep doing better. They wanted to, learn about time management. They wanted to know about how job searching was. Like, I had one girl that would always ask me, like, so how's your, process for job applications going? And she was only, I think, 14, and she was already thinking, like, mapping out, like, by 16, I want to work in Tim Hortons. I want to start saving up, whatever. And that's all because, they want to get as far ahead as possible. They're not looking at it as, I'm not smart, so that's what I'm here. It's kind of like, I am here, so I'm going to make the most out of it and, like, get as much as I can.
Yeah, I think the analogy that someone used with me is that a lot of folks, right, they have that stigma of being kind of behind.
Yeah.
But if you compare it to something like sports, right,
Yeah.
every sports person, every athlete has a coach, right?
Exactly.
And a coach doesn't mean that you suck. It means that you're progressing and you're starting out and you're trying to get better and better and better. So a tutor is really a coach in like the academic sense, right?
Exactly.
And not necessarily in the academics too. It could be kind of life or just kind of other different areas of growth, personal and professional development that you have. So I encourage folks to think about tutoring a little bit more wider instead of just the kind of traditional like math tutor, science tutor, English tutor, whatever. There could be more of a broader sense, and seek out help in other areas as well. So in your experience, so how was it kind of on the flip side? So you mentioned that you did have a tutor. What was that experience like? So
I think so. Just bringing it back to like what I was talking about math earlier. When I was in grades say 1 to 8, my math was great, fantastic, no problem. And then I think when I was in grade 9, the second that you sort of like lose it and you don't really get a concept, and they keep running with that concept, it's very hard to catch up. Right. So I think somewhere along like grade 9, when we were doing, I can't remember what it was parabolas or something with that. Like at one point I just didn't know what was happening, and it just went downhill from there, and I couldn't pick it back up. And when you're in this big classroom with 20, 30 other kids, right? Your teacher doesn't have time to come and sit with you and work through that process. I could have tried to teach myself the math. I just didn't bother. So my parents were like, okay, maybe we just get a tutor. And I remember, I think it was someone who was maybe also in university, and he would sit down, and he only came for a couple of sessions because it's like, you understand it, you're just not practicing and you're just not really focusing on it. But when he came by a couple of times, I'm like, okay, when someone slows down and explains the same concept again slowly, I understand it. Just my teacher was moving at a different pace, and I guess her teaching style didn't really match up with where I was at learning, right? But it's the same thing that I was being taught. I think it was academic grade 10 math, because I know there's applied and academic. I don't know the difference. I think they removed that now. But he was teaching me the same stuff. It just, when I was seeing it, with pictures and all that, it made so much more sense. Same math. I don't think it made me smarter or dumber. It just helped me have the tools to understand it now. So now I can do it.
Right.
And I think a lot of kids would benefit from that, where because I feel like a lot of kids, they have that moment where they go, oh, that's what it is. And it's like, yeah, you knew what it was. It just, you needed the help to sort of piece it together. I feel like that sort of piecing together is missed a lot often because teachers kind of talk for 1 hour and they lecture. And once you've clocked out, it's kind of hard to get back in and sort of, put together parts that you might have missed in between. Tutors can help you do that, like, piece together parts that you maybe missed in between.
Right. I think the couple of concepts that come to mind is that growth and fixed mindset that I think we've chatted about before, where first of all, you have to believe that you can learn it
Yeah,
and understand it. And as you mentioned, sometimes people learn things differently, and maybe it's not even differently. Sometimes you just need that time to reflect and process
yeah,
and absorb and understand the material before you progress. Because the unfortunate part about the school system is that, well, the teacher has a whole curriculum they have to do. If 20 students get it and two don't, well, they can't stop for the two students
yeah,
to continue for the
exactly.
rest of it. And it's no fault to the teachers. It's just that
Yeah.
that's the way the system has developed. And I think I've heard it equated to like if you were to build a building, and let's say it's a 12-story building, right? Like one for each grade that you do. Imagine having the first floor, and you don't build it at 100%. You build it at 90%, right?
Right.
And then the next floor you build at 90%, and the next floor you build at 90%. And by the time you get to the ninth floor, then the whole structure below it is whatever, just that 60,
Exactly.
whatever that number is. I can't do the math in my head. And then you miss a concept. So that floor
Yeah.
is not even at 90%. It's now at 60%, and then the
Right.
other ones above it are even worse. So but
Exactly.
all you need to do is take that time to either shore up that one wall or that one concept, and once you get through it, oh yeah, then everything makes sense, because it's not
Yeah.
the whole thing that you don't get. It's the one or two or handful of concepts, and a
Exactly.
tutor can definitely help you kind of fill in those gaps
Yeah.
to kind of grow. So yeah, I think that's definitely a reason for folks to take the benefits of tutoring. And that tutor that you had, was that a paid tutor on your side?
Yes.
So there are options for folks to get paid tutors, but you mentioned that Pathways was a free program
Yes.
for the participants as well.
I believe they reached through, they have particular high schools. I'm not exactly how I'm not sure exactly how it works. I don't know if kids have to apply,
Right.
because I do know they do have like, not GPAs, but they do have, like I think you have to attend a certain amount of tutoring sessions, and they have other support things as well, because I also know they would cover things like TDC and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So it wasn't just tutoring; there were mentoring programs and all that, and a lot of them were they would work very closely with the high schools,
Okay.
because a lot of the kids would have other things going on as well. It wasn't just for the tutoring; they would have like personal stuff going. So there was a lot involved there. I don't know exactly how they recruited kids, but I think the biggest thing was like, if you're coming, we're trying to push you to attend post-secondary, and it's like you can't just apply, and you have to actually show up and show that you're doing work as well.
Right. And where I was trying to go with that is that for those that don't have the financial means to be able to find a tutor, then there are other programs out there. And sometimes it's just a matter of asking a friend, a classmate, maybe an older year student or something, to see if they can explain to you, older brother or sister or one of their friends,
Yeah.
cousins and things like that can be a great treasure trove of tutoring skills. And sometimes all it takes is just asking and
Right.
reaching out for that help, I think, is important. So what are some of the suggestions that you might have for folks out there to become a successful tutor? Like, what are some of the tips and tricks that you've learned over the years, or that you've kind of honed and groomed, that you would kind of share with folks to be a more successful tutor?
I think if you want to really help your students, like I made sure I always told my kids the good things that they were doing first, right? Instead of looking at their stuff and telling them like, you got to improve here, 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 here. I'm like, this is what you're doing well. Here's where we can improve. And that's because I was doing writing. I feel like if you're doing math, maybe it might be a bit different, but because when I was focusing on writing, it would be a lot of like, structural stuff like that. I think that's an important part. And the reason I say that is because I want to encourage kids to have the growth mindset. I don't want kids to feel like you're only being shown critiques, right? Part of growing means you also know where you're improving, where you're doing better, and to encourage them to want to keep, having a tutor. So to show that it's working. Like when we work together, you are doing better. It's, and it's all on you. It's not just me, like it's a team effort. And show interest in your kids. It doesn't have to be just about work. At first it started with work, and then we're talking about other stuff too. And it just makes them feel more comfortable to approach you and, ask questions. That's the biggest thing I would say. Build a good relationship with them.
So what I heard from that is the quote, what you appreciate appreciates, comes to mind. So when you focus on the good things that they do, then you get more of the good stuff. But if you focus on more of the bad stuff, then you might get more of the bad stuff. Sometimes they correct it and they correct it and make updates, but sometimes they don't. And the other part I heard was being curious often shows and expresses care, where you feel like, hey, you're interested in this person's life, not just for the writing or the homework or the whatever they're supposed to be doing. It's also for them as a person, and
Exactly.
caring for them as a person can be another important factor of learning, because it's not just about the material itself. Sometimes it's the, am I in a mindset, do I feel safe, as you mentioned, or in a place where I feel that I can learn and not be kind of pointed out or called out or
Exactly.
like that, right? So what about on the other side? So if you were to reach out to some of the people, like to become to become tutees, I guess, if that's a word, the person being tutored, what would be your recommendation to be a more successful tutee, or someone that's kind of a learner, I guess?
Yeah, I would say it's okay to not understand things, right? I feel like a lot of times we think we have to know things. It's okay if you don't know. And it's okay if like that understand, like it doesn't matter what level you're at, because you can learn. Just give yourself time and be very patient with yourself. I think we unfortunately live in a world where things are kind of like, we want things to be done fast, like fast everything. And it's unfortunate, because when it comes to learning, slow is better. It helps you remind things better. It helps you understand things with a better grip. Another thing I would say is learn in a way that suits you, in a way that you will remember things. So another person's way of remembering might not work for you. I know for me, when I'm learning a new concept, I have to have an analogy that goes with what I will remember. I cannot just memorize a concept. If you just told me like, here's a concept, here's a definition, I will not remember what that is unless I'm able to personally connect to it. And if I'm given a chance to sort of talk about it and remember it for myself, I'm like, it doesn't matter, I'll remember it forever, that's good. So I think really just understanding your own learning style, and you know what, that might happen. You might discover a new learning style when you have a tutor. You might find like, oh, you know what, this actually works better for me than that, or whatever. But I think, yeah, just have your open mind and find what works for you and then run with it. Go with it, yeah.
Yeah, what I heard from you, similar to the kind of growth mindset, is that, well, in order for you to know that you can grow, you have to know what you don't know and then be able to admit to that. And the whole point of having a tutor is for you to learn and get better and grow. So there's nothing wrong with that. And put your hand up and ask tons and tons of questions, I think would be good. And make sure that you truly understand it. So don't just move ahead with, yeah, I understand most of it, right? That builds the floor at 90%, right? And then the next floor will be a little bit more shoddy, a little bit more rickety, because you haven't taken the time. And it sounds like you should also take your time, right? So just because your friends or your peers or whatever are learning a little bit faster, everyone has their own strengths. So you'll learn things faster than other people, and others will learn things faster than you. But there'll be things that you're good at and other people aren't. So just being aware of that. I think it's important on the learning style too, where there's research on things like the visual and auditory and like kinesthetic learning styles. And from what I found is it's actually, everyone is all three of them, but just in different ones. So actually, if you learn to learn in multiple modes, where you're hearing and seeing and trying it out, then that's probably the best way to learn. Versus you're just doing it on your own, but not listening to instructions or details, or seeing it but not hearing it, that sort of thing. But to your point, finding what learning style that you have, and success leaves clues, right? So going back to, when is the last time you did learn something really well, and try to replicate that however you learned that. So maybe it was with a friend, with a bunch of people, maybe it was on your own, or try to do that, because there's so many resources out there on learning to learn. I've been, over the past few years, trying to find ways to improve my memory. Right. So there's all sorts of memory techniques, and apparently, like the ancient Greeks use this method called the loci method, for location. You need to search that up, because there's a concept called the memory palace, right? So and the thought is that if I gave you a list of 20 things, you're going to remember like 7 plus or minus 2 things, right? That's what science says, right? But if I were to say, go from your front door and go to your bedroom and name me 20 things along the way, you could probably name me 50,
Yes.
right? Because just to the left, there's in that drawer, there's something
Right.
there, and then over there, in the closet, and whatever, and you could probably name a whole bunch. Because
Yeah.
humans, as they evolved, were meant for kind of geographic, kind of location-based things, because they needed
Mhm.
to know where the fruit trees are, where the lions were, where the
Yes.
whatever was. But these abstract lists and concepts, whatever, like when did that ever happen in nature? Well, we created it
Right.
as part of the
Yeah,
school.
that's really interesting because now that you say that, that makes so much sense, right?
Yeah.
I can picture right now, bed to everything. I can list you 100 things. You tell me to memorize a list now, 5 things. I would give or take 2. I don't know.
Exactly. So the next time you're trying to memorize a book, like go to that front door of your house and then put something there that represents the first thing, and then walk to the next room and put something there. And the whole concept of like the memory palace or the loci method is based on that. And the interesting thing is it also helps with your imagination and your creativity, because the thing is you have to imagine it vividly. Right, you have to manage it or imagine it so that it's memorable, right?
Yeah.
So usually you put like motion and a lot of activity. Sometimes you put like violence or sex, because those
Right.
are things that are quite memorable for folks.
Yeah.
I don't know if folks would want me telling their like grade 10 to learn that sort of stuff, but whatever it is to make it memorable. And the
Yeah.
thing is, you learn it once, you often learn it forever,
Exactly.
because you don't have to keep on like through rote and repeating like 100
Right.
times and all that sort of stuff. And then all you need to do is to just go back to your front door and walk out, and you'll know
Yeah.
exactly what it is, right? And
Yeah.
there's all sorts of different techniques as well, but I encourage folks to learn. And there's no end to kind of your potential for understanding these. But
Yeah.
as part of it, a tutor can be very helpful. So yeah, thanks for sharing your insights on
No
being a
problem.
tutor, and also some insights on being a good tutee. Right?
Yeah.
Are there any kind of parting words that you'd want to share with folks as they kind of examine whether they want to get some tutoring or be a tutor?
Please go for it if you're able to. I don't think there's anyone that wouldn't benefit. It's one of the things where I just feel like you might think you know everything and then there's always room for improvement. So no shame. I mean, of course, if it's something that's not feasible, no big deal. But if it's a possibility, go for it. See if it works for you. You might be surprised. And that goes for whether you want to tutor or if you want to be tutored, whatever it is, like go for it, try it. I feel like even when I was tutoring, I was improving myself because I was going back and remembering these concepts. I was improving my own ability to write because I'm looking at the stuff. I'm like, oh, like, this looks good. That doesn't look good. And it sort of improves your own learning. So you're not losing anything by being a tutor and you're only gaining either way. So go for it.
Sounds good. So thanks for sharing your insights, and hopefully we have you back for another episode.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the SWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Luki Danu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.